Hey, it's Andy from Fox Cities Core. In 1998, my family took a trip to the UK. We did something called the Magical Mystery Tour, which allowed you to hop on a bus that was a replica of the Magical Mystery Tour bus, and they drove you around Liverpool. Video's not the best quality, but wanted to post it here for anybody that might be interested. Enjoy.
And then they moved from the little apartment they had there out into the oldest suburb of Liverpool called West Derby, and that's where they opened up the basement of their house and a little coffee bar and meeting place for all their son's friends. That turns into one of the hottest spots in town, a place called the Casbah. But here we are now at the Tourist Information Centre, here in the city centre. Traffic's looking a bit jammed, Les, but you can get through it. I'm going to jump off the bus and see if there's anybody else going to join us today on the tour. If there's anybody on the bus who needs to collect tickets from the Welcome Centre, if you please follow me. If there's more than one of you, I suggest just one person comes and the rest stay and keep the seats, because it is a full bus today, a total sellout, so we're going to need every seat. You don't want to lose your seats together. So we'd like to wait till the bus is stopped, as soon as Les can find a space to stop, and then we'll go.
Is that clock up there? I don't know.
That is the Roman Catholic Metropolitan Cathedral of Christ the King. A very unusual, a very modern building here in Liverpool. There's over 25,000 pieces of stained glass in that tower. And look at the belfry there in the front where we've got the bells in order of descent of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. Now us Beatles fans here in Liverpool did ask the Archbishop at the time, Archbishop Beck, if we could possibly call them John, Paul, George and Ringo. But he said no, didn't he, Les? Can you remember why? I can't remember why. It's ages ago now. Oh, that's right, he said they're not all saints. Oh, that's not in Liverpool then. They were down in London in the studios putting together an album that was going to take the musical world by storm. An album called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. At the time when it was officially opened, the people of Liverpool all had mixed views about this modern cathedral. The Archbishop went into the Liverpool Echo offices, our daily paper, and he put the headlines in the paper saying, "You either love it or you hate it, but you can't ignore it." And he was absolutely right. And those words were going to be used time and time again to describe one of my favourite Beatles. You either love him or you hate him, but you can't ignore him. John Lennon. Coming up on the right-hand side, the Philharmonic Dining Room sits the most ornate pub in the north of England. And look at the exterior, and imagine what the interior is like. Mahogany wood, cut glass, and they also serve a good pint. At college here in Liverpool, this is where John was a student, and this is where he met the boy who was to become known as the Fifth Beatle. The boy who was responsible for falling in love with a German lady on their first gig to Hamburg. And she was responsible for those mop-top haircuts. His name was Stuart Sutcliffe. Her name was Astrid Perscher. Stuart wasn't really much of a musician, but he was a very talented artist. He went to Hamburg with them on their first gig. Their second gig, it was while they were playing their second gig, he told the lads he was giving up the band. When they went back to play their third gig, very sadly Astrid was at the airport to meet them with the terrible news that Stuart had died the day before of a brain hemorrhage. He was only 21. The building next to it with those lovely ionic columns. Now this used to be a very prestigious boys' grammar school here in Liverpool called the Liverpool Institute. This is where Paul and his brother Mike and George Harrison all passed a scholarship to attend. Their parents were very proud of them because they came from extraordinary working class backgrounds. Over the years, of course, they became famous Beatles. Over the years, that building became derelict. In 1980, Paul saw the state of his old school when he was on a home visit. He decided to do something about it. It took him 16 years, but together with the help of hundreds of other patrons, Paul McCartney came back in 1996 with our Queen and officially opened his School of Fame, the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts. The first intake of students graduated on Tuesday. Paul had always promised to come and present them with their diplomas, but of course he didn't realise his wife was going to die. The week before, on the Friday, Lippo got a phone call from Jeff Baker, his publicist, to say that he couldn't face it. He couldn't do it without Linda by his side. We were all upset, but we all understood, especially the students. On Tuesday afternoon, I was over at Fourth Lynn Road with the BBC when I got a phone call from my mole here at Liverpool to tell me to get my butt over to the school immediately because Paul had turned up. He kept his promise to the students and he came in very quietly, very quickly, presented them with little badges, and then he shot off. But I was one of the fortunate ones. I saw him, I got some lovely photographs, and I got a big hug off his brother Mike. That was great. His son James was with him, and his daughter Mary, who is absolutely beautiful. And here you can see all the traffic jams, because all the students of Liverpool universities, the John Moores University and the Liverpool University, are still graduating, and they're using the Anglican Cathedral for this ceremony. That's why there's so much traffic, and that's why it's taking us so long to get across this street. But now you're looking at the largest Anglican cathedral in the world. It's the 5th largest of any cathedral, and it's the only cathedral to be built north to south as opposed to east to west. It's built that way to take in the magnificent view from the main entrance right across the River Mersey and right across the city centre. It's built of local red sandstone. The sandstone comes from the quarry in Woolton. The quarry gave its name to the school, Quarry Bank, and that's where John was a student, and that's where he got the name for his first band, the Quarrymen. Work started at this end of the Lady Chapel in 1904, and work went on through both World Wars, with services taking place as each section was completed. It took 74 years to complete. Paul came here when he was just a young boy. He came with his dad. He auditioned to be a choir boy, but they sent him away because they said his voice and his musical ability just weren't good enough. Can you imagine? Designed by a 22-year-old gentleman called the town. Any city or any port city has always got its tough parts. And this one, right down by the docks, is an area of Liverpool called Toxteth. It's still a very close community though. It's seen lots of different changes over the years because it started its life off as a forest. And this is where King John's men used to come and hunt wolf and deer. Over the years, as Liverpool, the little fishing village, grew, people were coming from all over the world to make their homes here, start their own communities. Liverpool is a very cosmopolitan city. We're going to be heading through Toxteth along Prince's Avenue, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about when you see all the different churches that we're going to pass. Now, by the time we got to the reign of Queen Victoria, Liverpool was the second greatest port in the British Empire. On the right and the left, you can see streets of houses, beautiful houses that the very wealthy Victorian gentlemen had built for themselves. You'll always be able to see streets of little terraced houses that the Victorians built for their workers. But they did give their workers the luxury of a toilet in the backyard. And as we go along, we're going to see those different kinds of houses on all over the city. A very special party was taking place in Rosebery Street because the band that were playing there were playing for the first time ever together. They were a group of teenage teddy boys. They called themselves the Quarrymen. They'd all met when they were 7 years old at Woolton, at St. Peter's Church. They went to Sunday school there and they remained friends for many, many years. At the age of 11, they'd all passed the scholarship to attend various schools around the city centre. The leader of the band was a boy called John Lennon. He went to Quarry Bank. One of his best friends was a boy called Ivan Vaughan. Ivan went to the Liverpool Institute. His best friend at school was a boy known as Macca. Well, that was June the 22nd, 1957. What those boys didn't know on that day was that 2 weeks later at the Woolton Fete, Ivan Vaughan would introduce his best friend Macca from school to his best friend John Lennon from home. And together those two boys would make musical history. But there'll be more about that later when we get to Woolton, because now we're heading into an area of Liverpool called the Dingle. It's named after the southwest coast of Ireland. A lot of Irish people came through Liverpool in the 1800s, and some of them came from Dingle Bay. They settled here in this part of town, and they named it after their home. They named it the Dingle. But we don't call it Dingle Bay. We don't call it the Dingle. We call it Ringo Land, because this is where our Ringo was born and brought up. Richard Starkey was born on the 7th of July, 1940. That makes him the oldest Beatle. The bombs had just started to drop on Liverpool. We were at war with Germany. Times were tough. His mum and dad, Elsie and Dick Starkey, did everything they could to keep their little boy safe. They used to put his cradle under the bed. When the bombs started to drop, they thought he'd be safe there. Sadly, a few years later, Richie's mum and dad got divorced. Poor old Elsie had to go out to find any job she could to keep her and her little boy clothed and fed. He was born at home and his mum and dad dead at number 9 Madron Street, the house down on the left-hand side. It's actually boarded up. It's 5 down on the left-hand side, just where the little boy is now. Elsie had to go out and do any job she could find to keep her little boy and herself clothed and fed. Times were tough. Even after the war, we were still on rations here in Liverpool. She did a house swap with a friend of hers because her friend lived in a house where the rent was a little bit cheaper. She put all her goods and chattels on the back of a handcart. She sat her little boy Richie on the top of it, and she wheeled it up Madron Street, across Hyde Park Street, and down to number 10, Admiral Grove. It's the house down on the right-hand side, painted pink and white. And that's where Richie stayed till he became a famous Beatle. Elsie remarried a man from London called Harry Graves, and Ringo always said, "Even though my parents divorced, I had a very happy childhood. I had a good stepfather." You might recognise the Empress pub here because this is the pub that Ringo put on the cover of his first solo album, Sentimental Journey. His mum and his stepdad used to come here every Saturday night and have a good old sing-song around the piano. Her favourite song to sing at that time was a song called My Little Drummer Boy. And I'd love to have asked her if she'd have known then what the future held for her little boy, if she knew he was going to turn into the most famous drummer in the world. Well, he was a sickly child, and he's still not 100% today. I've a boy of 12 was suffering with this lung disorder. He had to go to a hospital, and he was in this hospital for over 2 years recovering. I had an Irish grandmother. She always used to say to me, always look for the good in the bad. When anything bad happens, something good will happen. She was absolutely right. Because out of the badness of this terrible lung disease he had came the goodness of his talent. While he was in the hospital, the nurse on the ward put together a little band to keep all the children occupied. It soon became evident that Richard Starkey was a very talented drummer.